All right, welcome, friends, to the Gen Z Show brought to you by Generation Ziegler. I'm your host, James McLam, and I'm joined today by a couple of guest hosts, some folks who have gone through the youth certification process that we have here at Generation Ziegler. Outstanding young individuals from the great state of Minnesota. We have Lath Arsward. How are you doing, sir?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me today, James.
Where are you at today?
I'm actually sitting in Colorado at my brother's temporary house as he's studying to be a pastor. But, I'm missing my cold weather over in Minnesota. It's like 90-some degrees. And I know for everyone else that doesn't seem hot. But, once it goes past, 75, 80 degrees, I'm just melting like a popsicle. So
I'm in North Carolina. If we got down to in the coastal area of North Carolina, if we got down to 75 during the summer, there will be people with coats on walking around. It's so bad here. So. And coming to us from Virginia by way of Ohio and now living in Nebraska, Ms. Abby Durham. How you doing, Abby?
I'm doing great, James.
Are you looking forward to fall football?
I mean, absolutely. We're going to have some football going on around here.
I would think so. For those of you who are wondering what we're talking about, when we recorded this, the Big Five, the Power Five conferences are deciding whether or not they're going to have football. And it's a possibility that Nebraska is going to announce today that their conference is not going to have a fall season. They may postpone it. So we understand about the situation.
If we have to play ourselves, we're going to have football here in Nebraska.
You're going to have red and white scrimmage games it's not red. Y'all call it cream. What do y'all call it?
Scarlet and cream.
Scarlet and cream. So it'll be scarlet and cream scrimmage games the whole fall. That will be fine. Well, today on the Gen Z Show, we're joined by Mark Jewell. Mark Jewell runs Mark Jewell Speaking and Training out of Nebraska. He is a executive coach, an organizational trainer, but he really has a message I think resonates with youth. And guys, what do y'all think about what he's going to share with us today?
I'm super excited to hear his story and the whole concept of not just surviving, but thriving. And I mean, I don't know how many times I've probably said that, today I'm just surviving, I'm not thriving, but to hear him actually put those words into action.
And to understand really what it means.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's really cool because, he talks about how he went from surviving to thriving and how he started this business on him. He's very much a self-starter and really shares hope with youth today, saying that we can do it as well. We can go from not just surviving, but thriving in everyday life.
Well, audience, stay with us. You're going to enjoy this opportunity. And at the end of the show, Mark shares how you can join and be a part of some of his groups and some of his challenges that he has coming up this fall. So let's start then with Mr. Mark Jewell. Mark, welcome to the Gen Z Show. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm excited to be here. This is a real pleasure. I was excited when I saw you reach out and ask me to be on here. I know the quality of the people in this outfit, so I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, I know you and I met at National FFA Convention several years ago, and we've had an opportunity to engage since then. But many of our Gen Z audience, they may not be familiar with who you are. So share with them a little bit about who you are and your journey and what brought you here.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll appreciate that. So I, at the current state by title, am the CEO of MJST, which in the past has stood for Mark Jewell Speaking and Training. And we rebranded, renamed here a few years ago because it was quickly becoming more than just me doing all the speaking and training. We've got a team of coaches and trainers that do the work, and we're largely in the corporate space, right? So companies hire us to work with their leadership teams, executive teams, sales team developments, and those would be the three main buckets that we work in. But where we veer off from what we call your traditional corporate training is we try to actually create experiences that employees would want to go back to. And so the reality is in the corporate space, sometimes training is an afterthought. And so we try to create an experience for people who get to go through, whether it's a 1-day event or a 2-day event or our coaching programs that not only focuses on helping them obtain a skill to be able to do their job better, but also helps them work on becoming the best version of themselves. And so we're what we call a whole person approach. Some call it life coaching for the corporate space. You can call it kind of whatever you want, but that's really effectively what we get into is we work on developing that whole human, the mom, the dad, the brother, the sister, the salesperson, the CEO, the VP, whatever their title is, as a whole person, because we don't believe you can separate you from your role, your title, and all the different things that you do. And so that's what we spend most of our time doing is, training corporate employees and coaching them in our signature 12-week coaching programs. Now we have some year-long coaching programs of different types, and that's the bulk of it here at MJST. And prior to COVID, we were running quite a few events, over 30 events a year. And obviously that's slowed down just a little bit now. So I get more time to spend with my 3 kids, Nora and Maggie and Everett, and I get to hang out with them. And when I'm not home with them, usually I'll be up in Canada, hanging out up there with my girlfriend Christine. And we have another business that we've been starting together. And sometimes she comes down here, and we try to make that whole thing work. And it's a fun little adventure.
I know a lot of your work, as you just said, is with organizations, and you work with them to not just survive, but to thrive. And I really like that concept and the word thrive. But for you, what does the word thrive mean to you when you're working with people?
Yeah. So the easiest way for you to get into the feeling of it, right? So thrive is a nice description, right? So like when we're thriving, like we say, we're feeling good, right? What are we really feeling? Well, we're feeling in momentum, right? So when you've been putting in the effort, we call it the appropriate effort to get into better shape, right? And so I decide to get up and start going for a run. And first I go, a few blocks, and then I go a half a mile, and then I can go a mile, right? And I mean, at first it doesn't feel much like thriving, does it? It feels like effort. It feels like work. It feels like, I don't want to go do that tomorrow, right? But then after maybe 2 weeks, 20 days, a month, whatever it takes, right? All of a sudden you notice it's like your body wants to get up and go do that thing. And in fact, if you don't do that thing, your body will give you negative feedback the other way. So that's the moment where you've achieved what I'd call momentum, right? And what the rest of the world calls momentum is what we call thriving. And, we can figure out what is the thriving blueprint for just about anybody. And it is different. There's 4 of us on this call right now. And there's 4 different blueprints that, we need to discover. But there is a consistent pathway that each of us can go through in order to get there. And that's really, as we're working with people to help them stop surviving and start thriving, it's literally helping them go through the necessary processes in order to get to that level where they can feel in momentum, not just in their body, not just in their business, but in their relationships and their spirituality and their legacy that they're working to leave behind.
So for a young person who's listening to this, who's listening to our show, maybe they're late teens, early 20s, and they're thinking, I'm not in the business world. I'm years away from that. How can they take that word thrive, the momentum that you're talking about? How can they apply it to themselves, or what would it mean for them? What would it look like for them?
Yeah. If I'm going back to, 20 years ago when I'm in that space, man, just try some things out. I mean, this is one of the biggest things I recommend. And the same thing I recommend with my kids. They're 12 and 10, we just try to get them different types of experiences. Life was meant to be played more as a game. Life is an adventure. There's plenty of things to be out here. And so I think sometimes when we get to that late teen, end of high school, early college, it's like, I'm supposed to have everything figured out. I got to have it all locked in and dialed in. And buddy, 20 years ago, I didn't have it dialed in. And things are going okay now, right? So I would say just don't get too caught up in this idea that I've got to have it all figured out. I got to be on a trajectory and have my 401k figued out, and who my financial advisor is going to be by the time I'm 21. Like, this is probably some good advice, and be conservative. But as it pertains to, like, how do you apply this thriving blueprint? How do you apply the Survivor's Guide to Thriving into your life? You get out and you go try some things on. There's a crucial moment that we all have to break free from survival. So when we talk about survival in my work, it's the unconscious level. So if you've ever been in a state Like you guys probably know somebody. I'm sure in the work that you guys have all done, you can think of somebody right on top of mind. When I bring up the idea, somebody who's got undiscovered potential, right? We all know somebody, and it could be a close friend. Just like you can see it for them, but they can't see it. Well, especially when we're young, obviously we have, I believe as long as you're living, you still got undiscovered potential. And especially when we're, in our late teens, early 20s, we're literally just discovering what's possible out here in the world. So the best way to go have some discovery moments to break out of this unconscious survival mechanism, which is just undiscovered potential in many cases, is to go try some things on for size, go on an adventure, go on a road trip, right? Keep up with your studies, go to school, right? Do some internships, learn what you like, learn what you don't like, right? But don't get caught up in this idea that you got to have it all figured out, because that eventually will lead to the other type of survival, which we call complacency, right? And when we get complacent for so long, we start to get bought into this idea that this is as good as it's ever going to get. This is as healthy as I'm ever going to be. This is the job I'm always going to be stuck in. Right? And that's just another type of survival. And we start to develop these unconscious behaviors that keep us stuck there. So the more you can train yourself at this stage of life to have discovery moments and be comfortable having them, the greater it gets. And that increases with exponentially over time.
I love that concept of discovery moments at this age, because it's always shocked me when we're doing these calls and we interact with a lot of youth, how many of them already feel like, okay, this is my path is already set for me. Things have already gone for me, and they don't understand that they have so much opportunities and potential ahead of them.
We're much more plastic the younger we are. Like our brains just have a greater level of plasticity. And something we always share with our groups when we're working with them is, by the time you were 5, your brain was about 95% as big as it was ever going to get, right? So I got a 4.5-year-old, right? And he's a little bobblehead, running around the house all the time, right? But by the time you're 7, 95% of the neural connections, the neural pathways that will drive your preferences, your patterns that will continue to show up for the rest of your life are basically baked. Right. So before you really know, and we're operating in up till age 7, we're operating what we call theta state. If you guys ever get into like imaginative states, right, where I can just imagine all kinds of different possibilities. I daydream, right? But we're closer to like a theta state when we're doing that. And up until about 7, we're just sponges absorbing all this information, good and bad, right? And I don't know who's to judge what's good and what's bad. But these are the things that end up sticking with us, the rest of our lives. And so the teenage years and the late teen and in the early 20s those are our best chances to try that out and like make it into what we want it to be while it's still more plastic. As you get to be, I'm 39, as you get to be a little bit older, things shift, behavior change becomes a little bit slower, more challenging. And I work with a lot of people that are later career, and I can attest to that. So it's a little bit easier, early on to just go try some things out, see what fits.
Well, this conversation is not just between you and I, but we bring our guest host on here so they can ask questions from their perspective. So I'm going to turn it over to them and let either one of them jump in and see where they want to go. Guys?
You got
it. Mark, where did you go in your life from surviving to thriving?
That's a really good question. So there's a lot of examples because there's been a lot of survival. About the age of 30, I woke up the day after my 30th birthday, and to be quite honest with you, I was in a space in my life where I was quite dissatisfied with the results that I had created so far. Okay. Coming out of the University of Minnesota, where I graduated from back in 2004, man, I had everything going for me. I see Leif's a U of M guy too, right?
You go for that hard.
That's right. I came out of the university. I was the president of the College of Ag student board. I've been kind of a leader in my fraternity. I've been a cheerleader for the Minnesota Gophers. I had done all these great and sometimes crazy things. Coming out of the university, I had my degree in agriculture education. And I kind of, I felt like I had the world by the tail, like everything, like I'm picturing this career, man, by 30, like when you're 23, 24, and, getting out of university, and you're thinking by 30, like I'm going to have it figured out, right? I'm going to have it figured out. When I showed up at 30, I didn't. My money wasn't where I wanted it to be. My relationship with my wife at the time was nowhere near where I wanted it to be. I was struggling. We were sleeping a lot. I have a daughter who's a type 1 diabetic. And so I was getting up every 2 hours around the clock to check blood sugar when she was 2 and 3 and 4 years old. She was 23 pounds when she got diagnosed, and there wasn't a syringe small enough on the planet to give her the minimum effective dose of insulin. And so there was just always, a lot of stress, right? I woke up and I looked around and I realized, like, my house isn't what I thought it should be. My all these things, my career, the recognition in my career wasn't even close, right? So I've been kind of dumping on you here a little bit. Like, that's a lot of things, right? And it's, I got to do something. And I'll be honest with you, at that stage of my life, my capacity was so low. I was so tired. Just, kind of beat down in these complacent survival behaviors that I mentioned earlier. The one thing that I had enough strength to do was I took back an hour of my day, and I had to get up at 5 a.m. to do it. But I told my kid's mom, I said, listen, if the kids get up, and I was traditionally the one who got up because I've always been an early riser, I'd get up with the kids in the morning. But I said, listen, if the kids get up between 5 and 6, you need to take them. And I'm going to go have some coffee, and I got to go do some stuff. And I would go down to my kitchen table, and I would put on YouTube. Thank God for YouTube. Because it was so broke that we didn't have the money required to, like, go to the conferences or go hire a trainer, for me to hire a coach or anything, right? And so I could go watch motivational speakers like Les Brown and Zig Ziglar and, all the greats. And I would go and sit there from 5 to 6 in the morning, drink two cups of coffee, and I would take in positive content. And that was the moment, like, little by little by little, just doing that every single day, almost every day for a year. And then I've continued to go out, except the difference now is it's not an hour a day. Some days now it's 5-6 hours a day where I would just have constant positive programming, whether it's music or speakers or audiobooks going on in the background. So I'm always consuming content, and it shifts and changes. And today I do a lot more meditation and internal stuff and, channeling through journaling and things like that. But that was where I, obviously things are different now. So that was 9 years ago. And the journey from that day to this has been one that's been, incredibly profound, but my life is incredibly different. My health, I'm in the best shape and the best health that I've ever been at 39. I've got a great business that, prior to COVID, we've had to deal with some layoffs and some things as we've gone through the economic downturn. But we have a team of 5 to 6 people at any given time. We have the capacity to coach 1,000 people a year.
Wow, that's amazing.
So we've been able to grow, obviously, and that's just over the last 9 years. And this is the one pro tip that I can give anybody that wants to go from surviving to thriving. It's never going to feel as fast as you want it to. So we have this human condition where it's like, I want change and I want it like now, right? And you're changing and growing. Okay, just know that there's not a straight line. If you draw an XY axis, right, there's no straight diagonal line 45 degrees up. There's no hockey stick approach to personal growth, right? It goes up, it goes down, it goes backwards, it goes sideways, right? And then but if you trend it out over time, it goes up, right? We can't help but continue to grow, especially if you're putting intention behind it. So, Abby, that's a big one for me, but in every area, in my physical health, my spirituality, my relationships, and there's been a lot of change, over the last few years. And then I've been open to receiving the necessary change that got to happen in order to allow, this guy to manifest.
That's awesome. And one of the things that I really like about what you said relates back to my favorite Zig Ziglar quote, which is, you're what you are and where you are by what goes into your mind. You can change what you are, and you can change where you are by changing what goes into your mind. And your story just, was validation of that quote, which when you were telling that, I was like, wow, this is great. People who know me know this is my deal. So great job.
Yeah. I mean, that really was the moment. Like, that's how I shifted it in the moment. And today I continue to take in, positive content. But a lot more of mine now is just coming from nature, time spent in nature, time spent with God, time spent out here just, listening, praying, yes, but listening more. And looking for the evidence. This is the other tip I'd give anybody. So we go about asking for things, whether it's something from your boss or something from, from your parents or your teachers or your God or whatever. But then we forget to stop and look for it.
Life?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I guess, like, really, Mark, I know some of your backstory, but how did you get to where you're at today? Because you're a self-starter. You started this business you have. And then kind of the second part to that is, do you think youth can still do that today? Do you think people of our generation can look at you and say, I want to do something similar, start my own business, start my own company, be at the success where Mark's at today?
You bet. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the good news is, I mean, at least here in America, I do believe America still works. In the moment that we sit in, we're obviously in a challenging time. My business has been no exception, and we've had entire clients that have canceled contracts, that have gone backwards on deals, that have decided not to do things this year, and it's only just now kind of starting to come around because people are starting to get their feet back underneath of them and figure out, okay, the world's not really going back to the way it was ever, so now what are we going to do about it, right? And they're looking for leadership in that space. So I'll try to break it into two parts. Remind me to come back to the second part, which is like, okay, this is what I got to do in order to be able to do this, something like this. But the first part, how did I get started, right? So I started running classrooms when I was a sophomore in high school. The University of Minnesota had produced a curriculum called Dads Make a Difference. And this was the public schools solution for public school kids to get influence, to basically say, I'll break it down for you, to just not make babies in high school. Okay. So that was the PC way to go. And the way they do it is they would use, positive role models from the high school would come to the junior high, and we would teach an 8th grade health class. So I was one of 4 kids from my high school. They got chosen to get certified to do this. Now, I'd been having some FFA experience and some leadership camp experience and things like that along the way, but this was the first real training and teaching experience. And it's what gave me a lot of reps even before I got them as an FFA leader. And so I got to go and teach this Dads Make a Difference course for an hour a week, throughout most of my high school career. And then what's interesting is when you put some sophomores and juniors in high school, sometimes in the position where they're having these vulnerable conversations with 8th graders, we don't have a lot of life experience at that point, and it's nothing against you if that's your age, but that's, sometimes that could be an uncomfortable conversation. I am the king of uncomfortable stuff. It does not faze me one bit. That's not everybody else's story. And so everybody else quit, and I got to pick up their teaching. And so next thing you know, I mean, I'm spending a quarter of my time when I'm at the high school going down to the junior high and getting to go teach this curriculum. So I graduated high school with over 100 hours of teaching under my belt. And so I knew from that, and I knew from some other experiences, that I really wanted to be in the training business. I loved the feeling of having an audience and being able to, to keep them in a story, or to make a point, or to teach, or help them have a breakthrough. And like that, there's something about that just continues to still be addicting. And I still love to have those opportunities. And then what shifted for me, I had some really cool opportunities. I got to actually go, in the 2006 to 2008, I got hired by the U.S. Agency for International Development to go over to Eastern Europe and work in Macedonia, where we basically built the leadership foundations of a new organization over there called MASUM. It was modeled after the FFA. And I got to design their leadership structure and all their leadership training over there for that organization.
What year did you say you were there?
That was about 06 to 08.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So we were still, the U.S. was still putting money, into Eastern Europe at that point. We're currently not, using a lot of government funds to fund anything over there. But at that time, during the Bush administration, we were doing a lot of stuff over in that part of the world. So it was, just, I had really cool experiences like that came up along the way. Now, if you're somebody who's thinking like, how do I get started? Those, to have, what are those kind of feathers in your hat? Absolutely not necessary. The one thing that I would mention that I advise anybody who wants to get started and you want to maybe start making a living, right, is just to continue, like to find that thing that you're passionate about, whatever the business is that you'd want to start, whether it's in the, the influence space and be a trainer, speaker, whatever, coach, great. There's plenty of work out here. I'll talk in a minute about how bullish I am on the coaching industry right now. But just find a way to add value. That's it. Just find a way to add value, right? How can I add value? How can I, the more value I put out into the world, the more value that's going to come back to me. It's literally a rule of the universe, right? Energy that goes out will have an equal and opposite reaction that's going to react back to you. And so sometimes you're going to put out value, and it's going to, the example that I always use is you open the door for somebody at the grocery store. Okay. You smile at them as they walk through the door. They walk past you, head down in their phone, and they say nothing. Happens, right? And some people, and I've even seen people post this in social media, they get so disgusted by the fact that that person walked through the door, right, and never said anything. And the question I ask back to them is, if you needed the response from that person to validate you holding the door, who were you really holding the door for? Right? And so what I'm talking about is unconditional giving of value in the way that you post, in the content that you create, in the playlists that you share, in the letters you write, in the cards you send, in the books you share, in the podcasts you share, and like the things that you do for other people. Just yesterday, we had a big old windstorm came through Omaha. We've been having all kinds of issues from it. And the big branch went down in the neighbor's yard across the street. And I said, oh, here's a perfect opportunity. I went and got my girls, right? And they're out there cutting it up. I said, you get over there and go help them out, right? And I went over, introduced them to the neighbor, and I said, these girls are going to help you clean this yard up. And at first they're kind of like, I don't want to do this, like, come on, what's dad making? I don't know this guy. We don't know these neighbors, that kind of thing. And, but they did it, right? Begrudgingly, they got done with it. And, about 20 minutes later, that neighbor walks across the street with a box of popsicles, for the kids to share, right? It was such a teachable moment. It's such a teachable lesson. Like the value that you give out has funny ways of unexpectedly coming back to you. So my recommendation is just give, but then don't have an attachment. Release your attachment that it has to look a certain way, show up a certain way, be a certain way, right?
Funny you tell that story, because on Sunday, the exact same thing happened here. We had a heavy rainstorm, and a tree across the road from ours fell. I didn't even know it had fallen. Part of it was in my driveway, but it had blocked the entire road. And I heard a chainsaw going on. I thought, what an odd time to hear a chainsaw after a huge rainstorm on a Sunday afternoon. What was going on? And my wife called up to me and says, hey, our neighbors just called and said there's a tree down across the road and part of it's in our yard. I'm like, what? So I went out, and sure enough, huge tree, and already some of the neighbors had gone there, where the person whose tree that it was never came out of their house, never saw them at all. And I know they were home because you could see their vehicle in the driveway, and their garage door was open. So I know that she was home. But my son and myself and 3 other neighbors, we just, cut it up and pulled it over. We had to pull it into their yard. And I actually was very, very, very concerned about our call today, because the city called us yesterday and said that they were going to come and grind the tree up today. And I was like, all right, we're going to be recording. I'm going to hear a grinder in the background. But so far that's not happened. So my call this afternoon, it's probably going to be right there. They're going to catch up then. But nothing ever happened about it. And I will admit to you guys and to our audience, I was a little bit of I was like, she didn't even come to the door. And here we are, and it ain't our responsibility for the tree. I mean, there was some of it in my yard I needed to get out, and I would have done that. But, we did the whole thing, man. And the neighbor even brought his friend over yesterday and finished cutting it all the way to the stump. Well, last night, I knock on the door. She's there with a key lime pie at the door. She bought key lime pies from everybody, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah. That's the funny thing. We never really know what's going on in someone else's story, right? And far be it from us to, it's easy to sit back and judge. Why didn't they, show up and do what I would have done, right? And
but she said that she had been in the back of her house on a Zoom call showing a client a house because they couldn't do in-person showings. She had taken the pictures and videos and was showing the whole thing, doing a virtual house showing and had no idea anything was going on until she came out later and saw all this tree in her, but not really in her yard, but right on the side of her yard between that roads. So.
Yeah.
You guys got other things you want to follow up on? I saw y'all.
So, Mark, you kind of talked about. Oh, go ahead.
Well, so one other thing I wanted to just mention, about being bullish, and to Leif kind of finish up on your conversation or on your question. So I'm bullish on this training and coaching space right now. Meaning, like I believe that there is plenty of need for people who want to be of influence and share the message and help people in any way, shape, or form. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can structure business, a lot of different ways that you can serve, a lot of different ways that you can, bring value to other people, whether it be, eventually when we can come back together in the usual way, running some events, doing online training and coaching, which is what we do a ton of. Technology's never been better. Innovating in that space, right? I mean, a lot of your probably more experienced folks aren't going to want to hear much about this, but whoever can crack the code on virtual reality as a coaching mechanism is going to be well ahead of the curve. I mean, I would want to be, I'm an early adopter in the space, don't know how to use it. I'm interested in it. I want to find a way to be able to, to feel like we're all sitting in this environment, in this park where I'm sitting doing this interview with you guys right now, and feel like we're all in it together. Right. So I think there's a lot of cool ways to just innovate. This industry never stops creating. And with the ease of the distribution of content, from the way that you can influence people through Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and whatever the different innovations are. I mean, there's lots of ways to be able to do that. But the big thing is, and especially now in this world where, at least in my space on the corporate side of things, where people are now spending a lot more time working from home, you have that, but you're also going to have a lot more people that we're struggling with a lot of mental health stuff around this as well. And so having that positive methodology that you can use to influence people, share information, whether it's quotes or insights or your coaching or whatever, there's going to be a huge, huge opportunity. If you're a young person, right, if you're 18, 19, 20, 22, 25, wanting to, think about this and be in that space and be an influencer, then, now is the time where I mentioned early on, right, just go out and have some experience. Get some experience, try some different things on, push yourself, climb a mountain, start a business, fail at it, and learn, one of the most valuable things I did when I was 28, I started in 27. I started my first business outside of after, post university, and it was a horrible failure. And it was miserable. I lost all my money and all this stuff and everything, and it was the best thing that could have happened, because now when I go down and I sit down with executives who are sometimes on the verge of literally crying in front of me because things are going so poorly, it makes me very relatable. And I've been there, right? And I know what that feels like. So the more experiences that you have that you can share, with people is great. And if your message is messy, good. Like if you got some stuff you feel guilty about, you feel some shame around, like you feel some, like you feel like you shouldn't have screwed that up that way, I'm here to tell you, man, your mess is your message. The world of where coaches, speakers, trainers need to be super professional, show up in a 3-piece suit, et cetera. Like those days are not that it's for certain personalities very valuable, but it's not everybody, right? This is an authentic world where we're showing up as the most authentic versions of ourselves, and that's what people respect. So what's your mess?
That's quotable. Your mess is your message. We need to hashtag that. We need to put that on a shirt. We got that's some branding opportunity right there. Your message, your message. I love that. I love that. So, well, Mark, if our audience wanted to reach out to you, learn more about what you do, take advantage of stuff, where can they reach you?
Yeah, easy enough, man. If you want to jump on Instagram, it's just at Mark Jewell. Jewell has 2 L's on it, just so we're clear. So Jewell is an easy place to jump on. On Facebook is just facebook.com/the Mark Jewell, or you can search for it. I had to go the Mark Jewell because somebody else claimed the Mark Jewell end of it, so I trumped him with a V. So
like Ohio State, you know.
Yeah.
That's right. I just said, well, Ohio State can do it. Mark Jewell can do it. So, and then just, it's markjewelltraining.com is the website, and easy way to get a hold of us over there. I've also got a Facebook group, and we'll be running some cool challenges this fall. So my girlfriend Christine and I have another little empire that we're building called the Great Unlearning Project. And this is a really fun one because one of the biggest things I've learned in the last 20 years of being in the personal development space is information is good. Okay, there's skill sets that need to be built, and there's lots of things like that. But there comes a point in time when it's not necessarily more information we need. Sometimes we need to unlearn the old beliefs, the old patterns, and the things that are consistently keeping us stuck. So if you've ever got a bad habit, right, that you need to get out of, or that just keeps keeping you stuck, a lot of people get into this personal development space and they get on this hamster wheel of personal growth, but they never really get anywhere. Right? They're always reading another book. They've always got another podcast, but the actual achieving or allowing, as we call it, of success sometimes seems evasive, if you will. So we've got a Facebook group out there as well called the Great Unlearning Project Facebook group, and we're constantly sharing information about what we're doing in that space to help people not necessarily take in more, but how do I unlearn the stuff that's keeping me from allowing more abundance and success and freedom and fulfillment in life. So that would be another great place to come hang out with us. And we're going to be here in about middle of September, probably be seeing a nice little 3-day unlearning challenge coming up.
Awesome. Mark, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you on behalf of the Generation Ziegler family and the Gen Z Show. We appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on, you guys. It's been a real pleasure, and look forward to seeing it come out.
Thanks, guys.